Welcome to a new episode of Halifax Sports Talk. Andrew McGinnis, Dayton Camo with you. We got a good one for you this week here, folks. We are excited about this episode. Of course, we will touch on the Halifax Mooseheads, but we have a special guest here, Jamie Tozer, to come on with us, talk about that big fight we saw last weekend, talk about the coach's comments and calling out his team. We posted it all over our social media. We want to hear his thoughts. Of course, Jamie covers the team. He's very close with the team, and I'm sure he'll have some great comments for us on that. And we'll also just discuss overall his thoughts on the St. John's Sea Dogs. Jeremy Keefe joining us. It's time to welcome a new sport and a new league to our podcast here. And the Thunderbird season begins, at least at home, on Friday night. Looking forward to that date. And of course, we'll touch on the Mooseheads towards the end of the show. But not one, but two guests today, man. Looks great.
It's going to be awesome. Jamie's going to have a lot of insight into what happened over across the bay. And then a couple minutes later, Jeremy's going to be joining us. So it'll be fun to get both of them on and see what their thoughts are this season on what's going on here.
Well, you and I spoke last week or earlier in the week, obviously, about the fight, and we were talking about it and posting stuff. But again, I got to reiterate how it made its rounds across social media. Like, it seemed to have really found its way across multiple social platforms. As we mentioned, the Game Notes, the Barstool podcast. We saw, I believe, Bleacher Report picked it up. Like, all kinds of different networks picked it up. So the Q obviously not seeing as many fights anymore. And then I think one of the first fights of the year, if not the first fight of the year, is an absolute throwdown between two guys. And we talked about it a lot, but the mismatch in size, what was it, 170 versus like 210? Crazy size mismatch. And the Thunderbirds, man, this team played pretty well. And, as someone living in the city, I got to say, it's been pretty awesome to see how the locals have really, really brought on this Thunderbirds team and welcomed them to the city. Because when you go to a game, it's a bumping atmosphere. It's a good crowd, and people are really all over the team. Now, I have to say, it definitely helps when you have a good team. It makes it a little bit easier when it's not like a last place expansion team. And they actually got the team from before, and the place that they left got the expansion team. But looking forward to a brand new Thunderbird season, man. This team has really been awesome to watch. It's been fun to get out to on a Friday night, and the city's really gotten behind them.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a fun season. Jamie did just join us backstage. But really quickly on the Thunderbirds, Pat and Jared, I was mentioning to them the other day at work if they'd like to tag along with us to a game. And Pat had a little plan that he mustered up there. I'll tell you after the show. But yeah, it should be fun. Should be a good time.
Sounds good. Yeah, those games are so fun to go to. And it'd be good for all of us to get out to a game together. As you and I have mentioned, we still haven't even met in person yet, which is crazy. We've been doing shows together for a long time now. And I guess that's just how it goes. And we're both pretty busy. But, we both follow all the Halifax sports so close. I think that it would make the most sense for the first time for us to get together. It would be at a Thunderbirds game or at a Moosehead game. But, all right, let's bring in Jamie. We are so excited to talk with him. Obviously, we want to talk about the Sea Dogs overall. But Jamie Tozer, Station Nation, covering the QMJHL overall, but especially the Sea Dogs. Jamie, welcome in. Your thoughts overall on this season so far in the QMJHL?
From St. John perspective, it's been a bit of a roller coaster. The first part of the season, I think we saw, wow, this team is, finally kind of coming together. There's clearly a direction that's going in. Things are looking good here. It looks like this is going to progress as the season moves along. And then the last couple of weeks of October hit, and then November hit. And, this team is kind of looks like they're struggling. They're struggling in all areas right now. And November was a real alarming, I think. And, for a rebuilding teams, it's common to kind of go through stretches like that. But this one was definitely alarming just because it's just, it's snowballing and there seems to be no real fix for it so far. So it's been tough to watch, to be honest. Like, it's been that, they've been getting blown out in a lot of games. They're on a 4-game losing streak. They've allowed 5 goals in each of those games. They've let in, I believe, 7 or more goals in 3 of their past 4 games. So it's been a brutal stretch for this team. And like I said, I think you kind of wonder just how they're going to get out of it, because they looked really bad. So it'll be interesting to kind of see. You feel like there's going to be a point where it's just something will happen and it's kind of the breaking point and things will turn around. But I think it's just kind of the question as to what that's going to be and when it's going to be. So it's been a tough stretch for them.
Jamie, we obviously saw what happened last weekend. Crickard's words on that obviously were kind of harsh. To be honest, how do you think the team rebounds this week against Moncton, a little bit of a bigger team?
Yeah, and like I mentioned, like you kind of waiting for like that breaking point, right? Like something's going to happen here where you kind of think that, okay, now things are going to finally turn around after this. And I think that this coaching staff, I think they're kind of like a lot of the fans. I think they're kind of like, what is going on here, and like how are we going to fix this? And I think from Travis Crickard's perspective, I think that he kind of throwing his team under the bus there was kind of his a way of trying to say, hey, like nothing I'm doing right now is working. I'm going to try and, publicly shame these guys a little bit, that maybe that'll be what can kind of get them going and turn them around. So yeah, it will be kind of interesting to see if they can kind of turn it around this weekend. Obviously we didn't see it on Sunday. Sea Dogs struggled again after those comments were made. So, it didn't see an immediate turnaround, but maybe after a bit more practice this week, we'll see it. But I mean, if they can have success against Moncton, who's, one of the best teams in the league right now, extremely hot, third overall, that might be what can finally turn around. Just anything positive, I think, even if they lose to Moncton, but it's, it's a tight game, a close game that they're in from start to finish. I think that could be a big confidence booster for this team. And, I think everybody's just kind of confused as to what is going on. Like there needs to be something kind of needs to happen to really, turn this team in the right direction. So maybe it is a strong performance against Moncton. Their next two games against the Wildcats. They've had a weird amount of success at Avenir Center over the past few years. They already have one win in Moncton this season. So maybe this will be what can turn it around, but it will certainly be a tough test against a really hot Wildcats team.
Jamie, I always believe in credit and giving credit when it's due. I wanted to give you credit for the videos, for the the press conference stuff. I think if we're going to share content, got to give credit to the person that posted it on X or Twitter. So we originally saw a lot of the stuff from you. A few more questions for you, but I want to give you the chance. We really, really appreciate you being here with us. Where can people find your work? What can they see from you on social media, and of course your blog?
Yeah, you could just Google Station Nation. You see all the stuff there. Obviously the website, and then all my social feeds too. Still a big X guy, X or Twitter. So you can certainly follow me there. And yeah, it's we have pretty much daily coverage of the Sea Dogs, and I've been doing this now for forever, basically since 2009. So I've seen the very, very highs and the very lows of junior hockey. This has certainly been one of the lower stretches, I would say, but it's still interesting. This has been, without a doubt, one of the more interesting junior hockey teams to follow over the past 15 years. So it's been a lot of fun. So you can news and notes from the Sea Dogs pretty much every day. You can follow me for that. And then also just I love traveling. I love watching just junior hockey in general. So you can follow me for my arena travels too. Just finished up doing the CHL arena tour for the third time, I think. So I've been all 61 CHL arenas now. So finish that up. So you can still follow me for a lot of random arena information too.
Wow. That is awesome. That is pretty sweet. I thought you were going to just say at least the Q arenas, but
it's too easy.
No, not just the Q, but the CHL as well. Well, we'll definitely make sure to put your X handle on the screen and put it in the description of the video. I got to ask you about the scrap, though. The scrap itself was unbelievable. Rock'em sock'em robots throwing haymakers, but let's be honest, it was a mismatch. And of course, that's what Coach Crickard mentioned, was that it wasn't even just like a regular fight, two guys that were the same size. And I feel like, of course, that's why he was the most disappointed with the lack of the response. But tell us about Jacob Beaulieu, about your thoughts when you started to see that fight take place. What did you think overall with that fight that we saw last weekend?
Yeah, there's like a lot came of this fight. In the moment, I didn't really think a whole lot of it, to be honest. And, he kind of needed some time to kind of realize what had kind of happened. I didn't, Certainly a mismatch. Yeah, for sure. I think Beaulieu's listed at 5'9". Will Murphy's, I think, 6'4", got 20 or 30 pounds on Beaulieu. So, I mean, that is obviously a mismatch. But we've seen Beaulieu fight above his weight class a number of times in his career, and he can usually stand his ground quite well. And you saw in that fight that he's certainly well-crafted and can handle himself against almost anyone in the league. We don't see him fight a whole lot in the league. We have seen him, there was a good fight during the preseason that he did have. I can't remember who it was against, but it was also a mismatch, but it was a pretty good scrap too. So, he's certainly one of the, in terms of, form and technique, probably one of the best, if not the best fighters in the Q. And like Crickard mentioned, I mean, there's just not a lot of players like him. Like he's, that traditional fourth line guy who is kind of just out there, banging and crashing, and he'll get in the occasional fight. And I think, if Jacob Beaulieu was in the league 15 years ago, I mean, this is probably one of the bigger names in the league, and it's probably one of the bigger. I don't know if you could label him a heavyweight given his size, but he's probably one of the more active fighters in the league. So, certainly a really good fight from him, and I'm sure him and his team are quite happy with what they saw. And then I think the other element to that fight too is just given the rules in the Q now, what Beaulieu did. Was obviously a great trade-off for St. John. And, that's not a slight on Beaulieu, but the Sea Dogs lost a fourth line forward for the rest of the game, and the Eagles lost a top pairing defenseman who's, NHL drafted, probably would have played 20 minutes in that game. So for Beaulieu to get one of the Cape Breton's best players out of the game, that fight took place late in the first period. It was tied 1-1 at the time. Obviously a very smart and strategic move for the Sea Dogs to get Murphy off the ice in that way. But then I think, okay, you see that as, wow, what an opportunity for St. John here. There's a team that has struggled to score recently, and they're now playing Cape Breton team that, is not an elite team this season. And they've also just lost their top pairing defenseman for the rest of the game. They were only, fortunately for Cape Breton, I believe they were dressing 7D that game. So they still had 6 defensemen, but still playing a man short. And then the Sea Dogs came out for the second period and allowed 4 goals. And, I think everybody can kind of look and say, that just doesn't quite add up. Like something's just not quite right here. And I think Crickard was very much fair in what he was saying and calling out his team. Just a really, really disappointing to see that performance. And, Beaulieu is very clearly a beloved teammate. You go to any Sea Dogs game and you can hear him, screaming and shouting during warm up as he comes out on the ice. And, a lot of the preseason games, the smaller rinks, like you can hear him really firing up his teammates. So, he's a very well liked, very well respected. He wears an A on his jersey, and to see that response from the rest of the team was super disappointing. And I know a lot of the fans would agree with Crickard's comments. So, we'll kind of see how this plays out, and to see if the Sea Dogs can finally turn around again.
Jamie, what would you say is like the future of the fighting in the league? You mentioned how you take a player off the ice for that long. It's like if you can bait someone into a fight, and that's what Coach Crickard said as well, it kind of favors the team, get them off the ice. I think back to when I was covering the Mooseheads a while ago. I was working for John Moore with Sports and More, and the Joe Valeno and the
legendary fight,
Boko and Mama, Kelly Bent, like that was insane. 15-game suspension. And so obviously jumping over the boards is a little bit crazy, but what do you think's the future of the league as far as the fight's concerned, the aggression? What are your thoughts on no fighting in this league? Obviously, my 2 cents have been this. I'm not advocating for 16, 17-year-olds to go out there and trade haymakers. Personally, I don't like the stage fights, but I think sometimes sticking up for a teammate is pretty good. Stage fighting is not necessarily good for the game, especially at a young age. I might argue that we've seen more stick work since fighting has been banned. But when you see the W and the O and other leagues having fighting and then having to prepare for the pros potentially, how do you feel overall with no fighting, and how rare do you think it will be moving forward? Because obviously that wasn't just like the first fight we've seen in a while. It was a crazy fight as well.
Yeah, my overall thoughts on fighting for a long time has been that I really think the NHL would ban fighting if they knew that it wouldn't affect their business. I think there are still people who watch hockey because they know there's going to be fights, even though I'm assuming there's been less and less fights over the past 20, 30 years. But I think the NHL would probably ban fights if they could. I think the NHL is hoping that the lower leagues will eventually phase fighting out, so that over time there's just going to be nobody coming in the NHL that will or wants to fight. I think that that's kind of the future of hockey, which is, I think there's pros and cons to that, but I do think that that's kind of the future and the direction we're going in. I think this was clearly two players who wanted to fight. Like, I think everyone can kind of accept that. And, that's, just if they're both willing to do it, okay. I don't like it when, especially at the junior level, I don't like it when, you see a player try and fight another guy who's clearly doesn't want to or not willing to fight. I think that kind of doesn't sit that well with me, especially with players that age and given the risks associated with it. So, certainly, I kind of agree with some of the rules, even though they're kind of harsh in terms of the stage fighting and the instigator rules. I think that they're probably the best approach. But overall, I do think the Q is going to be at a bit of a disadvantage by some of these fighting rules, just because, the OHL still has fighting, the WHL still has fighting, and, the rules have been stricter and stricter, but they're not quite as strict as what the Q has. I was at a USHL game this season and saw an insane fight. So, there's fighting there. But yeah, I do think the Q has put themselves at a little bit of a disadvantage. I don't know if it'll be a disadvantage for very long. Like, I could see the OHL and WHL kind of catching up and introducing similar rules, but I do think the Q is maybe being hurt a little bit by this. I think the bigger thing is just the entertainment factor of the league. And I don't think a lot of people want to go to watch junior hockey just to watch fights, but I do think people want to go and watch, a good intense game. The bigger thing for me is that, I feel like we've lost some of the intensity of junior hockey, and, you go and it's not as physical anymore. There's obviously not as many fights anymore, but I think it's just that overall intensity is just not what it was 10, 15 years ago. And, I hate that maybe that is part of these fighting changes. I hate, that there's maybe that correlation. But I do think that is somewhat of a factor. I think that, we're just not seeing the rivalries. We're not seeing the intense games on the ice that we once saw. And I do think that I do think the Q over time may suffer a little bit if they can't kind of find a way to bring that back.
Jamie, I got one more for you. Since you brought up the fact that you've been to almost every CHL arena, what's your favorite? What's the number one rank?
Yeah, that's a great question. Kind of depends on how you want to rank them. Like, if you want to actually rank them based on shininess and newness, it's tough to rank those, because the Oil Kings play at Rogers Place. So it's tough to beat that, even though that's not a real, junior rink. But, I'm always more of a fan of the old school modernized rinks. I love going to college hockey games because there's so many of the older rinks that have been, beautifully modernized to, have all the amenities that you'd want in a modern rink, but so old school. So for me, the best rink in the CHL is the Odd in Kitchener. I think that's, it's a big barn with lots of history, but it's, just an arena that is, you can feel the oldness and the history and some of the tradition in that building, but it's also just been so wonderfully modernized. It has just everything you'd want in a modern arena, but it still feels like an old school rink. So definitely the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium is by far my favorite. We're lucky here in the Q, though. The Q, of the three CHL leagues, the Q definitely has the most character rinks still. The OHL and WHL, there's just a lot of rinks that are kind of the same now, but the Q is really lucky. There's a lot of really unique rinks, especially around Quebec. So certainly encourage anybody listening that's a Q fan to get to some of the rinks around, because we're lucky to have so many neat ones close to us.
Yeah, Kitchener fans are a little upset that they didn't get the Memorial Cup, but Hockey Canada just released their World Junior pre-camp schedule, and they did gift them a game against either Sweden or I believe it's Sweden, the second game against Sweden. So they'll have something to make up for it.
Yeah, one of the things that's cool about Kitchener too is they always have the flags of the countries that their import players are from hanging in their arena too. So there's a lot of just really small things that they do that are really neat.
Neat. Cool. Neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. There's so much we could talk about with you. We could have you on here for a full hour show. I know you can talk Sea Dogs, but you could also talk all kinds of other Q teams as well. And he asks you, this goes to show this. I almost feel like kind of a pessimistic person, because the first thing that comes to my mind is asking you what the worst arena is, not the best arena. We'll try and get you on again. But Jamie, thanks so much again. Station_Nation. That's right. Across social media. All right, guys, make sure you check him out, follow him, and stay up to date. Thanks so much, Jamie.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
All right, guys, Jamie Tozer joining us. And I was just so surprised at how much that fight made its way around social media, Dane. We appreciate Jamie joining us, and not just to talk about the fight, not just to talk about the Sea Dogs, but give us a little taste of his travels and everything he's done. We'll have to get him back on as well. But 2009, since 2009, he's been doing this, covering the team, covering the league. And I love it how he said, he's like, straight up, it's not really been the most fun time watching this team play right now.
Yeah, it's definitely been a great time over there in the Sea Dogs. They're going through a little bit of a rebuild, but they've had some good memories. Huberdeau, and then the other 2022 team with Gardner McDougall. So they've got a little bit of stuff to look back on. We do have Jeremy Keefe backstage, ready to talk some Thunderbirds, though. So you want to bring him on?
Let's do it.
All right, sounds good. Sounds good. Jeremy, how's it going, man?
Good, fellas. How are you guys?
Not too bad, not too bad.
I gotta say, yeah, I'm with you on that. What Jamie's doing, it's like, holy cow, Since 2009, visiting every rink. Like, some people are dedicated, and we're lucky to have guys like that covering leagues for us, right?
Oh man, that's a hustle. That's a lot of arenas that he's been to. I thought he was going to just say like the Q or like a handful of arenas. I know someone that I work with that's doing a college basketball arena tour, and there's like 350, 360. He's only like 50 something through. But I mean, there's so many of them in such like condensed places. But he was on like a family vacation in Florida, and he made his way to like 3 arenas while he was there just to like check them off the list. But yeah, it's a lot. And yeah, Jamie really, really works hard covering that Sea Dogs team, but he knows a lot about the Q overall. All right, well, we're happy to have you here with us, and we're going to be talking a lot throughout the season here. The NLL season underway. We're going to mainly just discuss, of course, the Halifax Thunderbirds with you. But before we look forward, let's look back, especially since this team moved to Halifax. How do you think they've fared so far? I mean, they've had some success. They've looked pretty good. The city has really embraced them. But tell us about this team overall.
I mean, that's exactly what I was going to mention, right? The city has completely embraced them, right? So, the Mooseheads are king in Halifax, obviously, but nobody complained when, another team was going to move in there around the same time of the year. The place is, the nest, as they call it, is often just sold out. People are packed to the rafters. And that's because the Thunderbirds bring a really entertaining show every time they're at the nest. Ever since they started, I mean, they came right out of the gate. I think they were first in the division. And unfortunately, the pandemic shut down any chances of them, bringing home a trophy in their first year. But they make the playoffs every year that they're held. And, they're solid. So, last year, making it through the quarterfinals, losing in the semifinals. I mean, you got to look at it as a success, and Saskatchewan just only narrowly was able to take them out. So this is a team that has been building over the last couple of seasons, and some people could argue they're really hitting their stride. That mix of veterans as well as some younger talent could really spell some trouble for a lot of the teams around the league this year.
Yeah, I remember watching in my apartment in Toronto. It literally came down to a power play for Saskatchewan in that final game, and they were so close, so close. It's good to see more people getting into it around Halifax. There's been kids getting into the sport of lacrosse all over, so it's good to see that it's bringing Halifax together as a whole. I know, like you said, the Mooseheads are king, but I've got friends, and I asked them, you want to go to a Mooseheads game? And they're like, no, I'm waiting for the Thunderbirds home opener on the 5th. So if that says anything right there.
The thing with people our age, like if you're in your like 20s or early 30s or even 40, like people are realizing that the Halifax Mooseheads were like more of a family environment. Like my old man was going to a game, and I told him, I was like, I know I don't need to tell you this because you're going to have a beer, but just to let you know, like, I think the average person in there consumes 4 to 5 beers a game. Like, it is not a sober event by any means. It's more of I feel like the Thunderbirds have almost dragged like the early, 20s, 30s, 40s even, and it's now like more of a family crowd at the Halifax Mooseheads. So like you said, the nest, they're jam packing it. People have been impressed. And as I said before you came on in the intro of the show, people are obviously it's easier to be excited. Dayton, we've been talking before about how it's easier to be excited about a team when they're good.
Yeah, exactly. And Halifax last year, getting to the semifinals, it's all about this year. How do you do it again? How do you get back there? And this time, how do you get past the semis and get to the finals? Because obviously that's the ultimate goal. And beating Buffalo after that, because they're obviously reigning champs and they're a pretty good team. Everyone knows it. And that's pretty much the key to the season for the Thunderbirds.
And the Birds are going to get a chance to at least try with the Bandits pretty early on. And I think that after a couple of games, we'll know, we'll at least have a good idea of what kind of a season we're going to see here. To your guys' point about maybe it being more maybe the elder millennial kind of event. All these games happening on Friday and Saturday night, and at the time of the year when in Halifax it's going to be rainy, it's going to be snowy. You're not hitting the waterfront, right? You're not going to be hanging out on a patio. It's the perfect thing for that market at that time of year. And people are looking for things to do after a week of work on a Friday night, a Saturday night. They're embracing the team. They still are after a couple of seasons. I don't see that slowing down. And I find too, if you aren't in the market, there's still an exciting team to watch on TSN, right? On the weekends. It's not like you're having trouble. I mean, it's the most exciting game on TV a lot of the time, right? So, they got the music playing. There's going to be fights. I find they tend to be a little bit more exciting sometimes. You guys were talking about fighting in hockey. And I mean, everybody likes a good hockey fight, but those lacrosse fights, those guys aren't on skates, right? They're on stable ground. So sometimes those can be pretty exciting. And they really get the nest going too, right?
It's a street fight out there. It's pretty much a street fight when they fight. So look, Jeremy, I look forward to talking with you all the time and throughout this season. I am not going to lie to you whatsoever. I am the most casual as casual gets. I am the one going to the games and just watching. I don't know too much about lacrosse. I find it really cool the way like the shift changes work. Like when you regain possession, you got guys interchanging and all that good stuff. And everyone has different responsibilities. Obviously, I follow hockey really closely. But speaking to the casual fans, tell us about this Thunderbirds team going into this season, some of the players we should look forward to, some of their strengths, some of their weaknesses. Speak to all the casuals. And when I say that, I'm including myself as well. Educate me.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about the team in a second. I mean, the game itself, if you're a hockey fan or a basketball fan or both, lacrosse is the perfect sport for you to get into because it is kind of a mix of both. Like you mentioned, everybody sort of has their own roles, right? So defensive players and the forwards, you'll see a lot of quick changes because they want the guys on defense when they're defending. They want the guys attacking when they're on the attack, right? So it's not so much like the minute and a half, 2 minute kind of shifts that you might see when you're watching hockey players. They can be a lot quicker than that because the ball goes back and forth from end to end, and they're high scoring games. The thing about this team this year, at least in the preseason when they took on the Firewolves here just most recently, less than a month ago, it was actually a pretty low scoring game. Now I say that, and if you're a hockey fan, you think that's 1-0 or 2-1 or something like that. It was 8-7. 8-7 is a low-scoring lacrosse game. So if you like seeing goals, you like seeing fast action, you like seeing fights, lacrosse is the game for you. Why are the Thunderbirds the team that you should be watching? Well, they've got guys like their captain, Cody Jamieson, who's been there ever since the beginning. This is a first overall pick from about 15 years ago. And it's like Father Time hasn't touched them, right? He's still able to score, and he's even become even more of a playmaker than he was in recent years. So, the guy's getting big point seasons, but that's really padded a lot by the assists that he started getting. There's, like I mentioned before, there's a mix of some of the older guys and some of the younger guys. Guys like Graham Hossack would be, another one to keep your eye on. If you are into the defensive side of the game, he's the guy. He's been the player of the year before on the defensive side, and he still contributes at a very high level. And they've also got Jake Withers, who, is just a savant when it comes to drawing balls, right? He's the face-off guy. He wins way more than he ever loses. I don't know if he ever does lose them. So there's a lot of stuff going on there with the older guys that you see a real well-rounded team. Those are the guys I'd tell you to watch for. But if you've been following them at all for any couple of seasons, you're going to know those names. Will McLeod's a newer guy, though. I think you could see, after his pretty good preseason performance, I think this could be a really breakout year for a younger guy like that. And Randy Stats is a real big time two-way player. He's a guy that you're going to see get goals, assists, loose balls, and mix it up in the corners and stuff. So there's no shortage of guys that you're going to want to watch. The tricky thing is you go to their apparel shop, like who do you want to wear on your back? Because really it's kind of hard to make the decision, and there's no wrong answer there. But I mean, the Cody Jamieson jersey is pretty classic. If you're heading down there, Andrew, and you want to look the part and not just be the casual fan anymore, you can't go wrong with one of those.
Sounds good.
Jeremy, I want to talk about the guys in the crease. Drew Hutchison and Warren Hill kind of took the reins last year. They were both, especially Warren Hill, near the end of the season. They just signed Justin Getty. Do you think that's going to be kind of just like a backup kind of role, someone to fill that extra third string spot? I don't know if he'll see much play time at the start of the season while they try to get things going.
Well, I mentioned Father Time kind of ignoring Cody Jamieson, and Warren Hill's another guy that's been with the Thunderbirds ever since they hit Halifax and in the league longer than that, right? And he can be the most solid goaltender in the league on certain nights. And then there's other nights where, he might have an off night, and you need somebody who can step in there and can play the way that we know Warren Hill can play most of the time, right? So he is also getting to be, an elder statesman in the league. At some point, the Thunderbirds might be looking to have somebody else who takes over in that number one role. Right now, they're pretty deep in the goaltending area. I mean, having 4 goaltenders, you're probably not going to be dressing them every night. And yeah, as you mentioned, Justin Getty, new guy to Halifax. He's been in the league for 4 seasons. I think he's going on his 5th season. So still relatively young and playing pretty well, over the last couple of years. But he is somebody that hasn't done a full slate like a guy like Warren Hill has done, where, you're playing almost every single game all season. So it will be interesting to see. Hutchison was the guy in nets for that low-scoring affair at the end of the preseason against the Firewolves. I would be surprised if he would start the season here tomorrow night. I think we'll probably see Warren Hill in between the pipes to kick things off. But depending on how that performance goes, I mean, as we've talked about here today, they're pretty deep. They've got quite a few guys who can go in nets for them. We could see a change here early on, but it really all depends on what kind of a guy we see out of Warren Hill, because he could come out. I mean, it's hard to get a shutout in a game like lacrosse, but he could come out and be lights out pretty easily. And if he does that, he makes a really good argument for keeping him as the number one goaltender and keeping some of those guys as just being in the supplementary type of role. So it's a little bit early to make any kind of predictions. I like to think that we're going to still see, majority Hill for the foreseeable here. But some of these guys who are a little bit newer in the league could be, right on his heels for sure.
What a better way to market your home opener than to have it be against a brand new team in this league, a new organization. Yeah, you just played them in the preseason, an overtime loss, but that might make even things a little bit better, having some revenge on that team, getting to play them again in the home opener. What do you think this means for Halifax? And what are your thoughts on this new team coming into the league this season in Oshawa?
I think it's kind of a no-brainer that, there's the Thunderbirds and there's the Firewolves. There should be a rivalry. I mean, it's also now a Canadian team also. So that's another argument towards, making them a rival. As you mentioned, they were the most recent team in the preseason. So the last time, the guys were on the floor, it was playing against this team. So that's interesting. We've also got an early matchup against, the 3-time defending champs, the Buffalo Bandits. And then after that, the team that knocked Halifax out of the playoffs last year, Saskatchewan Rouyn, a team that has just seemed to kind of have their number when it really counts, So The early slate of the first 3 games, I mean, you couldn't ask for more, I don't think.
Well, I'm looking forward to the year, looking forward to watching, looking forward to chatting with you all the time about this, getting my info from you. And overall, just expectations, keys to success for the season. I know it's kind of a broad question, but keys to success to get back to a similar spot they were last year, or even to push forward to the finals. What does this team have to do on a weekly basis to have success?
Well, like we were talking about before, I think they've got all of the tools, right? They've got the guys who can put the ball in the net, and they've got some really tough defense, and they've got a deep goaltending roster, guys who can play lights out from night to night. They've just got to put it all together. And, they're starting things off against a team that had their number in a very defensive battle, right? Like I said, 8-7 is a pretty low scoring game. That means this team, as mentioned, guys like Graham Hossack, they're going to be able to slow things down when the other team's on the attack. But clearly, the Firewolves can probably do the same thing also. The Bandits, I mean, they can run the score up on you. They've got to make sure that if this is going to be a high scoring game in the 15-16 range, our guys have got to be throwing the ball in the back of the net as well. And then against Saskatchewan, like I said, they just sometimes seem to have Halifax's number for whatever reason. These guys have got to come out and be tough against a team like that. They've got to punch them right in the face and show them that, they're not going to back down, and it's time for a little bit of payback that, they've been owed for the last couple of years. So I could see, I hate to say that I'd see them starting off 3-0, but I don't think 2-1 is too hard to imagine off these first 3 games. And I do think that it's going to be a nice welcome back to the nest and a welcome to the league for Oshawa. So if I have to make a guess, I'm thinking it's going to be 12-9 Halifax this Friday night at the Nest.
I love it.
Even a score prediction.
I love that.
Why not?
Well, Jeremy, before we go, why don't you let everyone know where they can find you on social media and what we can expect from you this coming season?
Yeah, no, I mean, I've always been a huge fan of the Thunderbirds, and I'm going to be continually following them all season long. You can follow me on Twitter. I don't call it X, I call it Twitter. And Instagram, you can look me up, Jeremy_Keefe, I think both there and on Instagram. And let's watch the games together.
Awesome. Sounds good. Well, Jeremy, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you next Thursday. And actually, no, we won't. It's Monday. We'll talk to you Monday for the weekend recap. So stay tuned if you're available. So thanks for tuning in and joining us today.
Oh yeah, no, thanks a lot, guys. My pleasure. Looking forward to chatting with you guys all season long.
Awesome.
Can't wait, man. Take care.
You too.
Man, I'm pumped for the season now. After that, I am pumped for the season. I can't wait. It's look, when I said I needed to learn more and I want to learn more about the players, this is what I'm looking for. So the best part is, I promise you, Dayton, like, I'll do my prep, but any question I'm giving Jeremy is going to be a completely genuine question that I do not know the answer to. So it's going to be completely raw. Hey, I don't know lacrosse very well. I love to watch it, but he's going to be my guy this season. I look forward to it. And how about the score prediction? An exact score prediction. Gotta love that.
12-9. It's coming back. Like he said, they went to overtime. It was low scoring. So let's see if they can kind of bounce back and put some balls to the back of the net. And let's have a good season, I guess, Andrew, with some good Thunderbirds talk. And hopefully I get out to a few good games here.
All right, before we wrap up the show, because we're going a little bit long, and I'm sure we'll break it up. Maybe we'll post some videos online of just one section for Jamie, one section for Jeremy, of course. But Halifax Mooseheads here. We talked a lot about the splits with the home and homes, or the road trip, of course, against the Newfoundland Regiment. And, finally, they get a string of a couple home games now, playing on Saturday against a pretty good team coming to town. Oh, it should be a good matchup here, at least we'll say, because we saw what happened when they played them, Rouyn-Noranda, and of course they've got Val-d'Or coming to town. So 2 home games this weekend. We'll probably touch on the Mooseheads a bit more on our recap show on Monday. But any thoughts, any takes on this one? I'm sure the boys will be happy to be home here and not just play a quick home game to get 3 games in a row at home.
Yeah, it's yesterday was Wednesday, so they would have had practice yesterday at the RBC Center, getting ready for the weekend, probably a morning skate maybe on Friday. But just like you said, just happy to be home. 2 games, 3 straight at home, if you include next weekend, but they're only looking for these 2 games. 4 points would be huge. 2 bounce-back wins against teams that you've kept it close with. Val-d'Or, you should beat them on paper, to be truthfully honest. Rouyn-Noranda took you to overtime. Tough loss, but you know what always happens in the bounce-back when you get teams that are facing each other for the second time in very short periods of time. Sometimes it turns out the other way around. So we'll see, Andrew. It should be a great weekend either way for the Mooseheads. I expect a couple of points out of these 2 games.
One of my favorite angles is the rapid revenge angle. And it's not just rapid revenge once, it's rapid revenge twice against Val-d'Or and Rouyn. Of course, as you mentioned, 5-4 loss in OT against Rouyn and a 6-4 loss against Val-d'Or. Let's try and get a 2-0 weekend for the Halifax Mooseheads. One thing we know is in store for the Halifax Mooseheads whenever they're playing, especially at Scotiabank Center, an exciting hockey game. This team will not leave you leaving the arena with a 1-0 game, a 2-1 game. They'll usually give you a pretty great game. So, guys, we are so happy to bring multiple guests for you throughout the season. Not 1, but 2 guests today on the show. Dayton, any closing thoughts before we wrap things up?
I'm just happy we were able to pump out a great show. 2 guests. Jamie was amazing. I'd love to have a great talk with him about his CHL adventures. Jeremy's going to teach us a lot about the great sport of lacrosse, our actual truthful national sport here in Canada. It's not hockey, but I like to think it is. Either way, I'd pump for this season.
Jeremy Keefe, our lacrosse insider, our Thunderbirds insider for this season right here on Halifax Sports Talk. Guys, subscribe to the channel. Tune in all season long, whether you're a Thunderbirds fan, a Mooseheads fan, a Wanderers fan, whatever you're a fan of in Halifax, we will cover it for you. Like the video, comment, and subscribe here on Halifax Sports. We'll see you at least twice a week right here on Halifax Sports Talk.